Major cellular outages being reported nationwide.
Still no explanation for the massive nationwide cell phone outage. The outage lasting for hours.
Didn't have any service.
Just 24 hours ago, users on one of the country's largest mobile networks were left unable to make even basic calls or send texts for half a day.
Considering over the last 35 years I have been a radio communications enthusiast and radio operator, and I have operated numerous kinds of radio communication devices and have also repaired such devices, and I have found a lot of interest in this topic. And this is why I want to bring this information to you so you can have a better understanding of the potential consequences of certain situations that unfold that lead to these outages.
Widespread cell phone outages all throughout the country. Millions of people unable to use their cell phones to make phone calls or even use their cell phones to get onto the internet. Information has surfaced pointing to the possibility of cyber attacks, which are responsible for the recent cell phone outages affecting millions of people. Now, in addition to cell phone outages, the problem can become much worse. If there were a cyber attack that started to target our electrical infrastructure, then that would be the next thing that would fail, and then we would be in the dark. And behind me are lithium iron phosphate batteries, and these lithium iron phosphate batteries are my whole home backup batteries, which are also connected to a solar array on my roof. So I have solar panels and I have the batteries, so the solar panels charge up the batteries, and my solar panels produce at least twice that amount of energy, and I only use a fraction of that every day. So I fully rely on my system, which is off-grid. That means I don't have to worry about whether or not the utility company is providing me with power, because I constantly have power running everything in my house 24/7, 365 days out of the year. Now, not only that, there has been a history of our water supply being affected by cyber attacks. And not only do cyber attacks cause these things to happen, there are other things that can also be responsible for the recent outages of the cell phones that we were dealing with across the country. Now, there were some reports that one of the major cell phone carriers were having some issues with a reboot, and it was a software and a technical glitch that resolved itself after a while, but it left millions of people without any access to the cellular network. Now, the cellular network relies on many factors, including fiber optics, radio communications, and satellites that are orbiting the Earth. Now, if any of those things cease to work properly, then cellular communications can come to a halt. Now, there are other things that can interfere with cellular communications and our power grid and our water supply, and anything that involves radio communications, digital communications, telecommunications, the internet, anything that relies on the technology that we have today to be able to communicate data, or our voice as well. If that is affected, then many things cease to operate. Our banking systems cease to operate. We won't be able to use our credit cards, our cell phones. Some of us won't even be able to use our vehicles because a lot of those are tethered to the internet or satellites, and we have updates to our cars. The newer technology, newer vehicles have updates. Now, if there were to be a malfunction during an update, would your vehicle be bricked? Because if you interfere with an update on your Windows or your Mac computer, it's a possibility your computer becomes bricked and unusable because the update did not complete, and now you have data that is incomplete and your computer does not function anymore. So imagine if you're in the middle of getting an update in your vehicle, one of those over-the-air updates, and then all of a sudden it just terminates in the middle of the update. Can you use your car? Is it bricked? Now, the next thing that could be responsible for this widespread cellular network outage could be solar flares. Now, solar flares are very powerful storms on the sun, and they produce electromagnetic energy. Now, this electromagnetic energy is a very powerful form of radiation. The sun does produce ultraviolet radiation in addition to this electromagnetic energy that it creates. And we have a layer of protection that goes around our Earth that helps keep our Earth from being bombarded by excessive radiation from the sun. And when we have satellites up in space, those satellites are above that layer of protection, so there's a lot more exposure to the radiation from the sun, both the electromagnetic energy and the ultraviolet energy that comes from the sun. So it's almost like being near a microwave that's open, or inside a microwave. So there's intense radiation that is hitting the satellites up in space. Now, with that intense radiation, things can get complicated if it exceeds the threshold of the satellite's handling capacity. Now, say if a satellite can handle so much energy or interference, electromagnetic forces around it, or the radiation, once it hits its limits, it can start to malfunction. or completely stop functioning or just completely cease to function. Now, this technology was built to withstand a lot of radiation. Considering that it's in space, above that layer of protection, we know that it's going to be bombarded with a lot of radiation. And with these intense solar flares that we have been experiencing lately, there's a possibility that these solar flares could exceed the level of intensity that these satellites can handle. So the radiation, the electromagnetic energy can exceed the handling capacity of these satellites and cause them to be destroyed. And then in turn, our communications on Earth cease to work. Internet, cell phones, electricity that it relies on the grid, that relies on telecommunications, relies on radio communications, fiber optic networks, satellite communications. All of these are linked together. When one piece of the puzzle doesn't work, then it puts a greater load on another part of the puzzle. And some things just don't work at all unless they all work together, especially communicating in different parts of the world. We need to have all these pieces of the puzzle put together in our infrastructure to make it work out. Now, with the technology that we have today, we've come a long way. Years and years ago, we had analog communications when it came to cell phones, but now we have digital communications, so they're more secure when it comes to our data, our privacy. But the thought that somebody can infiltrate that and be able to access information from your phone, eavesdrop, hear what you're saying. So with all the technology, we have become dependent on satellites in radio communications. Now, I have a room full of radios, and I'm able to communicate all around the world. And at night on the HF band, which is high frequency, and also on the low frequency bands, you can hear a lot of static and interference. And if you turn on your AM radio, especially during the day, you're going to hear a lot of static. You're going to hear a lot of surges of static as well. And a lot of that comes from your electricity. You can have a ballast and a fluorescent light above, be a car running, the coil in the ignition, electronic devices, microwave, all kinds of devices can cause interference and cause crackling and popping and static on an AM radio. But also solar flares from the sun could be heard through AM radios. Even sideband radios, single sideband. If you're into radio communications, then you'll pretty much have an understanding of the whole theory behind that. Cell phones operate on a radio frequency. It's a UHF radio frequency. And so that radio frequency is carrying digital data through the air, and it's linked through the satellite systems and also linked through fiber optics. Now, when we talk into a cellular phone, our voice begins analog, then it's converted into digital data. Then that digital data is sent through radio frequency, and then it's sent through a receiver, which decrypts the encrypted data, turns it back into an analog voice, which is then heard on the other end. Now, with a cyber attack, somebody's able to intercept that. Somebody's able to interfere with that. Somebody's able to shut that down. And somebody can also inject in something very harmful, such as a virus or anything, and cause a malfunction that could continue to carry on and possibly take a whole network down and cause it to be irreparable. I noticed that I did not have any cell phone service. I had the big SOS. So I decided to drive my car and drive around and see if I can reach another tower. And the problem just followed me. Then I realized that this is not just isolated to one cellular tower. This is something bigger. Now, the other concerns are if you have a newer vehicle that's tethered to the internet or satellite system, what happens when you're driving somewhere on a road trip and something happens, such as a cyber attack or a very intense solar flare? Are you going to be stuck somewhere on the side of the road because your vehicle starts to malfunction? Just think about EMPs, how EMPs can cause things to malfunction or destroy technology as we know it. The sun can do the same kind of damage with those solar flares. So if it's not solar flares we got to worry about, then it's some kind of cyber attack. So it's either the act of some malicious person who has nothing better to do but try to get attention, or it's possible that it's just the act of nature, our sun. Let me know in the comments what you think it possibly could be. Is this the result of the solar flares, or was this a cyber attack? Now, there has been some big investigations, and there's some federal investigations involved to see exactly what has caused this issue. And of course, some information surfaced about just some technical issues with one of the cell phone carriers. And if it happens again, then we'll know that this is becoming to be a pattern, and this could be the beginning of something much bigger. And my big question to you is, are you prepared for what could potentially be up ahead? If this was a sign of something that's going to be much bigger, let me know.
This massive, widespread cell phone outage across the country causing over 32,000 customers of AT&T and other big cell phone carriers to lose service and not be able to make phone calls. Considering these major cell phone service providers do have agreements with smaller cell phone companies to use their towers, this means that there's a significantly larger amount of people that are unable to make phone calls than the 32,000 customers that were originally estimated. So this is a very big problem across the country. And I believe that this is going to lead to something much bigger and much deeper than losing cellular service.
There's more solar panels.
So this is a lot of energy that's being stored from the sun. And so if there was ever a power outage in my community, I would never know. So that's one of the big concerns when it comes to our technology. The concern is, how secure is our technology? Can it be compromised? Can somebody attack the system, hack into the system, and render it useless? You have to have a backup plan. Think about what potentially can happen in the future. Are we going to be safe from future cyber attacks or any other things that could affect our communications, our water supply, our electricity supply? To be off the grid totally, then you would need to have well water, have battery backup, solar power. Solar power could be good for 25 to 30 years, no problem, but it can go beyond that. As far as battery backup, you might get a good 15 years out of backup batteries. After that, degradation takes place. Then you're not able to store as much energy as the years go by past that point, but you're still able to make use of it. And now these are lithium iron phosphate batteries. So these are much safer to have in your house instead of having lithium ion batteries that could potentially burst in flames due to thermal runaway. And then there's no way to control that fire once it has established, because it takes one cell, like a domino effect, and then 1, 2, 3, and then they just all go. And then putting out a fire with water would be the biggest mistake. But with these lithium iron phosphates, they are much safer. So that's why I have them in my garage. And I once had a Tesla, but that's a whole other story. But the vehicle I have now, I don't want to really share what it is, but it does rely on technology. It does rely on the cellular network for updates. It also has a system that affects, it also needs GPS to be able to do other things, but that's how it is. So if you have a vehicle that uses technology, it's very possible that you could be stranded somewhere when something like this continues to happen, because this may be the beginning of something that's going to be much worse.
I had to redo this because there was an issue with the audio. For some reason, the audio was only coming out in one of the channels. It's supposed to be going out of the left and the right speaker, but for some reason, it wasn't working properly, so I figured I would go ahead and re-upload this video and fix the audio issues, because I don't want you to suffer if you're wearing headphones and you hear me just on one side. So I figured I would address that. I mean, it was very, very disappointing for me to had put all this time into making this video and sharing my point of view and my investigative report with you, and it just seems like sometimes technology just fails me as well. And so this time, I made sure that the audio situation is much better for your ears. I do have a suspicion that someone may be hiding something much bigger to prevent worldwide panic. Now, this is just me thinking deeply into the things that have happened over the years. Not just this one incident of nationwide massive cell phone outages. This goes deeper into what has happened in the past. And I feel like history has repeated itself on different levels. And as time goes by, are we going to be dealing with something much bigger and bigger? And is this just the beginning of something that's going to cause a much bigger panic? We rely on the technology that we have today. As I mentioned before, our life depends on a lot of the things that technology offers us. And our safety could be at risk if there are malfunctions in our infrastructure regarding communications and electricity and water supply, because all those things work together. In our modern world, our water supply is connected into a communication system, which all ends up ultimately being connected through satellite communications, fiber optic communications, telecommunications, radio transmission. So all these things together can affect all those other services. So I'm concerned for those who are not prepared for what's potentially down the road, because things are not 100% bulletproof when it comes to the power of the sun and the unpredictable things that could be happening in our solar system. There are rocks that are in space. There are so many things out there that could potentially impact our planet and cause the end of life to exist as we know it. So our continued existence on Earth depends on whether or not any of the objects in space hit our planet. Think about the size of some of the asteroids and meteors out there that are just flying into space. If one was to be close enough to our world's gravitational pull, that could potentially cause the end of this world as we know it. And there has been some close calls, and there is a giant rock out there that is being watched. Now, this has been coming into our path every so often. And every time that it passes near us, it is getting closer and closer. And what's going to happen once it ends up in that threshold of our gravitational pull? Is that going to be it? If it's not the solar energy from our sun that we have to worry about, especially if our ozone layer becomes depleted over time. Due to the things that are happening in this world, the mass manufacturing of products that are polluting the air, that are deteriorating the ozone layer, certain gases and fumes and chemicals, things that are toxic to our environment are causing our environment to be less stable when it comes to protecting us from the radiation that the sun emits. Just think, on a summer day, you go outside and you get sunburn. Imagine if there was no ozone. That sunburn would be much worse. That radiation exposure would be much worse. That's my concern, is that the technology that we have today, it works for our advantage, but at the same time, that technology can also work against us if we're not careful about how we utilize the technology in order for us to advance our technology and be able to be more efficient and safer for our environment. So if things get worse, it could be the universe telling us that we need to change things before things get more. I just have this feeling that someone is trying to censor those who speak about topics like this, because I put a lot of time into this presentation and I feel like YouTube is suppressing this. So the best option for me is to continually just share the things that interest me and try not to be discouraged by the YouTube's algorithm or by whoever is trying to silence me, because I will not be silenced. I will speak my opinions. I will speak what I'm feeling. I am not going to hide somewhere and keep things from the world that I feel are important for the world to know about. Now, this topic resonated with me because of my past experience with radio communications, and I used to be in the cell phone industry. So there are so many things that I can relate to in this topic. And I feel like this should resonate with so many other people because they can feel my energy and my enthusiasm. But I feel like there's some kind of wall. And I don't know if YouTube is putting that wall up, or if someone who doesn't want me to speak about this is finding a way to suppress me so that I'm not able to be discovered through the YouTube platform. So if you can, share this on social media, whether it's outside of YouTube, to help bring people here to see this video. Give it a thumbs up by smashing that like button. And don't forget to turn on your notification bell so you don't miss a thing coming from this channel. As I said before, I don't limit my content to just one topic. I'm all over the place. Just like my life is all over the place. I don't know if I'm coming or going. And so I want to be transparent with you and share with you the things happening in my life. And I know sometimes I get carried away on YouTube when it comes to certain kinds of events that are shared. And that's just my enthusiasm and my creativity. And I'm just having fun with it. And I hope that this will continue to work, because I'm running out of options. I've lost my job because of sharing certain kinds of topics regarding the speculation of aliens in Miami, Florida. And I believe some of the paranormal videos that I've shared may have contributed to someone not wanting me to work for their company. So I feel like my only choice to survive right now is to do side hustles. And one thing I'm not going to stop doing is making YouTube videos. Like I said, something big's happening, and I'm prepared for it. but are you prepared for it?
So many of us rely on today's technology for our employment, for our safety, for devices that help maintain life and our health. There are so many things that involve advanced technology, things that need energy to operate. And without the power, without the technology operating properly, there could be lives at stake. There could be people that will be suffering because they may be under some kind of pain management. And there could be some procedures that need to be done that involve technology to preserve or protect people's lives. And without that technology operating properly, many lives that could have been saved cannot be saved. There's a luxury that's coming from our technology, but there's also a necessity. There's something that we need. If we can go back hundreds of years, things are so much different, but you also notice that our lifespan was not as long as it is today. Considering that we are up against so many more things, and there's a lot of unhealthy things that are happening as far as diet, and I notice there's a lot more fast food consumption, and people are just living in the fast lane life where they don't have time to have home cooked meals, and they're in a hurry to go to work, they're in a hurry to do this and that, and they put their nutrition behind them, and it's like not on the list of priorities. So with our technology and advancement in the medical treatment that's available, we're able to prolong lives and cure diseases and be able to have a better preventative maintenance system that's operating now. So there's so many different things that are so much better because of technology. Transportation utilizes the technology that we have. Going across the country, flying here and there, it all involves the technology. And so my concerns are if some powerful EMP takes out our technology, or some powerful solar flares from the sun destroy our satellites, or if there are cyber threats or cyber attacks, all these things that could affect our technology could set us back and cost many people their lives. So this is something that we should all take seriously and prepare yourself for the unexpected. Prepare yourself for what could be lying ahead, because we cannot predict the future. We don't know what's going to be happening tomorrow or next week or years ahead. We can only be prepared for it by planning ahead, by doing the things that can keep us from being blindsided from whatever may happen in the future. I try to make my home future-proof with the technology, and I wanted to make sure that I had power, that I could be able to run my home in absence of the power grid. That way, I don't have to rely on the power grid for keeping my food refrigerated, keeping the air climate control in the house comfortable, or running any medical devices that may be needed in the future, and all the other necessities, including running a business. So I wanted to make sure that I had continuous power regardless of what happens with solar flares or cyber threats or attacks on our communications infrastructure or technology. And another thing that's scary is if you have a vehicle such as a Tesla or any vehicles that have self-driving capabilities, what if there were some cyber attacks that were able to control those vehicles, and then now you're not driving it, but the person who has somehow hacked into your vehicle has full control. And that's a scary thought with some of these autonomous vehicles, these self-driving vehicles. If they were to be compromised by some kind of hacker or someone who knows how to manipulate the data or somehow get into those systems, it's just a scary thought to think what can happen to those vehicles, especially if you're in those vehicles at the time such thing happens. So that's another thing to consider when having something that relies on technology. Anyway, I hope all of you stay safe out there. If you like this kind of content or any variety of content that I share on this channel, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe. It's not limited to just the news or things about
solar flares or radio communications or the most recent thing that was happening last month about aliens. It's not just about that. It's about a variety of everything. So consider that before subscribing. Just understand it's not going to be just stuck into one category. So if you subscribe and check out my other videos to see if you like the kind of content that I have on this channel in addition to this particular video. And if you do like that, then subscribe. Anyway, take care and be safe.